back once again to the complete free Flutter course presented by the same person as always, myself, Ovidius Mazuru. So let's quickly think about what we spoke about last time. Last time we introduced the block pattern and we went over to pub.dev and looked at the different things that they actually mentioned they wanted us to do. We spoke about the different structure, the structure that block has with the events and the states. And we were just about to start building our own block when one of my neighbors started being quite loud and I cut the video short. Now I did listen back to the video and I realized that my microphone didn't pick that up, luckily, but from my point of view, it was quite loud, so I didn't want to continue. But no worries, we are back and we're going to continue from where we left off. Okay, so I do very quickly want to mention the structure that the app's going to have. So this app's going to end up having two different blocks. And the reason we're doing that is because we're presenting like a sign-in page. So the first block, all it's going to do is check to see if the user is signed in or not. And if the user is signed in, it's going to reroute us to the main page. If the user is not signed in, it's going to reroute us to that sign-in page. And the second block is going to contain all that data that the sign-in page is actually going to need. Stuff like the email, the password, and if we press sign in, that kind of stuff. But okay, so last time we had just created this block over here, and we're going to end up having two, but this is what we have for now. And I did that by just right-clicking here. And hold on, my video has disappeared, so I'm gonna put it back as soon as I can. Okay, I forgot to tell it to float to the top, so give me a second. There. Okay, now my video is gonna stay. Okay, so where was I? Here. So I did that by going to command click on lib and hitting block new block, which of course is an extension we spoke about last time, which you can get from right here by Felix Angelov. And I believe he's the creator of BLoC, so it was nice of him to actually create this extension to go along with it. But going back here, so doing that action created three different files for us. The main file, the block event.dart, and the block state.dart. And I'm just going to open all of these. Now, these three different files are actually a single file, just split into three different parts. That's why you'll see parts and, the rest of the file. So event and state, and here we're in the main file. So whenever we import the block, we always import this first file, which I'm actually going to rename because I just noticed by default, it has that block twice, and I think that sounds kind of awkward. So I'm going to remove one of those. And I need to save these as well because this file here was renamed. So one of the things you're going to see is if you want to use anything, if you want to import anything in the state and the event, you actually have to import it in this main block file. You're not going to import anything in the events. You're not going to import anything in the states. You can still use your command click to import it automatically, but those imports will always go in this file. And VS Code and Android Studio should as well. Are going to put them into this file automatically for you. So that's taken care of, which is really nice. Okay, and let's quickly go over what these three different files are. So the off check block, which is our main file, contains the constructor for the block. And I'm also going to rename this. I do really like the block pattern, but I have to say I think it's really awkward how this extension doubles up on the block name. It's so weird. It doesn't do it in the other places. Do you know what? Actually, it was my fault because I always called it off check block. I should have just called it off check. So I'm going to rename these two as well. In fact, at this point, it would have probably been easier to just delete everything and start over because I really haven't done much so far. And I'm going to leave the file names because it doesn't really matter. So the off-check block contains the map event to state function. And this is where we're going to write all of our logic. So in map event to state, what we're going to do is take the different events, which you can see over here, off check events, and do different things in response to it. And normally this is going to end with us yielding one of the states. You can see this as an async star function. If you haven't seen async star before, don't worry about it. Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about async star right now. Essentially, an async star function is a function which returns a stream or needs to do something with a stream. And a stream is just a series of things. If you guys ever worked with futures in JavaScript, they're called promises. That's when you have to await something, when an operation takes a bit longer than usual. So we have to wait for it to finish so we don't slow down the rest of the application. Well, so that's the future. We have to wait for something. On the other hand, a stream is when we get like a lot of futures, one after the other. So rather than waiting for all of them, we just kind of occasionally emit them. So we'll launch one, then wait, then launch another, and so on and so forth. It's also a way of just constantly listening for something. So that is that. Inside the events, it's going to be the same as the Redux events that we had. We're going to add these events to our block in the main files or in our UI, and our block is going to do something in response to it. And finally, our state is what we're actually reading here. Okay. So let's start by actually making the states. And this is normally how we start. So we're going to have 3 different states in this off check block. The first one is going to be off check initial. And this is just going to be an empty state. It's just going to, it's basically going to say that we've requested to know if we're authenticated or not, but we haven't received that answer yet. In a real app, it would take, it might take some time to get that answer. It's not going to take a long time. It could be just 500 milliseconds, could be less, could be more. In this app, because we hard-coded everything, it's going to be like pretty instant, but, I do want to at least pretend it's a real app. So there's that. And it's not going to contain any data. It's just going to be like that. And then I'm going to have an off. I think it's really awkward that it says off check. I'm going to call it off state initial and off state authorized authenticated. And we're going to extend off check states. So as you can see, all of the states are going to extend this abstract class off check states here. So yeah, that's great. And I will tell you the truth, I don't normally work with blocks this way. In the next video, I'll show you guys how to use freezed. That's the way I normally do it. And then we're also going to have class of state unauthenticated. Extends off check states like this. So these are going to be our 3 states, and we're going to listen to them inside our UI and do different things in response to these different states. And then the events. Well, let's think what kind of, I'm definitely in the wrong place. Let's think what kind of events can we have? What do we want to emit? The first thing we're going to emit is like a request to find out if we're signed in or not. So we'll say class of event sign in off requested. Credentials requested. I don't know, that sounds really awkward. Off events, off requested. Yeah, I'll just leave it like that. Okay, so now we have an event and we have our states. So then we're going to go inside our off check block, and here we can write the logic. And you can see we already have this function which takes the events. And before that, we do need to update this because I changed the name. So I made my initial here be off state initial rather than off check block initial. So I'm just going to update that. And now I can say if event is off check, what did I call it? Off check, off events, off request. That's really awkward. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not used to doing it this way because normally I'd use freezed, and I think it's much more elegant. And then what are we going to do here? Well, we want to access our auth repository and find out, we'll call this isUserAuthenticated function and do something in response to this. We'll emit the state in response to this. So I want access to this auth repository, therefore I need to pass this in. So just like any other class, my block can take parameters or arguments when we actually create it. So I could say final, and what type did I use here? Auth repository. And of course I'll have to, after I write something, I'll have to import it. Final auth repository, I'll use an underscore auth repository like this. And now I should be able to import it like this. And now that I've done this, I can generate my constructor like this. So you can see it's just like any other class. We can do this stuff. We can pass in any other data. So yeah, that's fine. And now we can say if event is auth event requested. And let's see. So we're going to call this isUserAuthenticated, and that's going to give us a bool, true or false. So we'll say final isUserAuthenticated equals underscore auth repository, which of course is going to call this thing here, dot isUserAuthenticated. And then we can say if isUserAuthenticated. And I could also just copy this here, but if I were reading that code, I would think it looks really awkward. I don't like having this kind of stuff inside the if statements, but that's fine. You can do it if you want. So we'll say if isUserAuthenticated. Now we're going to use this yield keyword, and yield basically says like emit that state or emit something. In this case, it's going to be a state. And the state we're going to emit if the user is authenticated is just going to be this one right here, auth state authenticated. And if the user is not authenticated, we will yield auth state unauthenticated. So this is super simple stuff, at least at this level. We have an event coming in, we check the type of event, and we do something in response to the event, and then we yield some kind of state. And this is exactly why I started with this example, because there's nothing really here. In the last projects I was working on, this file ended up being 1,200 lines of code. I had, just a lot of stuff. And that's not even that large for a block. It can sometimes become quite unyieldy, but this one is not. Okay, so now that we have all of this, let's look at how we can actually use this in our UI. So if I go back into my splash screen, if I go to my main actually, so my main goes to splash screen, right? And splash screen currently just returns this, but instead of doing this, first let's give it access to, I'm going to close these for now. So first we need to give it access to that block we just created. And we had started doing this last time, but we didn't finish. So inside our, I'm doing it here inside main, but you can do it, you should do it as low down as you can. So you need it to be high enough to cover all the widgets that are going to use this block or provider, whatever you use it for, but at the same time as low as possible. But in this case, I do want it at the top. And here we're going to use the Multiblock Provider because I'm going to have the two different blocks. And the first one's going to be this block provider. And in create, so create is going to take a function with a context. And we're just going to do the arrow function to say auth check block. And the auth check block is going to take an auth repository. And here it's undefined. And honestly, I don't normally create blocks this way. Normally I use getter to do it for me. So I need to pass in the auth repository. So what I'm going to do is just make one right here. Auth repository. I thought I don't need to. I can just say auth repository, and that's fine. So I'm creating a brand new auth repository right here inside the constructor for the object block. This is a little bit awkward, so I could also create it here and then pass it in here, but I'm not going to use it anywhere else, so I don't want to do that. That's fine. So this is how we actually create it. We have our block provider, create, context, then you have the block, and you're just using that constructor that we literally just created. So a lot of times there's going to be nothing here, and it's just going to be the empty block. But in this case, I do want to pass in something. Okay, so now that I have this, I can go to my splash screen or wherever else I want to use the value. And then we have those three different functions we spoke about last time. We have the listener, the consumer, and the builder. In this case, I'm going to use that listener. The listener is going to, well, listen to what's being yielded, and then it's going to do something in response to that. So, excuse me. So I'm going to wrap this in a widget, and I just can't remember if I use a scaffold in these. I did use a scaffold. So, because I used a scaffold in the previous ones, I'm just going to leave this aside for now. So I'm going to wrap this in a block listener. And my listener is a function which is going to take a context, and it's also going to take dynamic, it's not telling me what, but it's a state. And then we can do something in response to that. And then we can also have a child. And child can be, for now, let's have what we had before. So the body will be the center, and the child will be the circular progress indicator, like this. So that's fine. So now inside this listener, I can listen to that state and just do different things. So I'll say if state is, and I'm going to pull up that state again so I can see exactly what I have. This is the wrong one. Yeah. We'll start with this. If state is off state initial, I don't actually have to do anything. So yeah, I'll just return. Else if state is off state authenticated, then I can say navigator.of context dot push replacement named, and the route name we're going to use. So if we're authenticated, we want to go to the home screen. That's going to be home screen dot route name, and else. So just to be really clear, for this one, I'm going to actually say else if state is off state unauthenticated, and say navigator.of context push replacement named, and here we're going to use our sign in screen.route name, like that. Okay, so what are we doing here? Well, we're just listening to the state, as I mentioned, and we're doing something in response. If it's the initial one, we're not doing anything, like nothing's actually happening. So this is going to end up just displaying my scaffold with the center and the circular progress indicator. So yeah, super simple. On the other hand, if the state that we're receiving is the off state authenticated, so that means that we are already logged in, then we're going to call our navigator and push replacement named. So that means that we're going to leave this page. We're not going to have access to that back button. If I just use push named, then I could use back to go back to the splash screen. But this doesn't make sense in this case. I don't want people to go back to the splash screen, which is just here as a temporary thing while we figure out if somebody's logged in or not, right? that's not logical. So here we're using push replacement name to say if we're authenticated, go ahead and go to the home screen. And finally, if we're not authenticated, then go ahead and push this sign-in screen, right? So send us to the sign-in screen so that we can actually authenticate and then do something in response to that. Okay, so I know this was quite simple. This is why I wanted to do it together in the previous video as well, but that didn't end up happening. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the sign-in screen, and we're going to make a second block, and we're going to use freezed to make it a bit more complicated. In fact, we haven't quite finished because I forgot something. Remember how we had this somewhere? We had this auth event of requested, right? We want to check if the user is signed in as soon as we create this block, as soon as we start the app. So what we're going to do is over here in the constructor, I'm just going to say ... add, and now I can add whatever event I want to. And in this case, I'll add const of check event of events, in fact, of requested. And it's giving me an error because probably haven't imported something. I might have made a mistake on my, yep. I forgot to extend of check event because normally I wouldn't do that. Normally I wouldn't write anything like that. In the next video, you guys will see what I mean. And it should let me use const. I'm not sure why it doesn't, but okay, it's giving me an error. I'll get rid of it. That's fine. So what I'm doing here, this add is just adding an event. And this ... notation, this double dot, it's like having two lines. It's like saying on the first line, have the auth check block with the auth repository. And then in the second line, we're going to take whatever we have, the auth check block, and .add auth event of requested. So we can simplify this into a single line by using this ... notation. It basically says whatever we have here, take that, and it's as if we're creating a new line to do whatever we're doing with it. So like this. So now that we're doing this, what's happening is that as soon as the app starts, we add this auth check block, and straight away we add this event. Straight away we check to see if a user is authenticated. And let's look at the actual flow of data, because when we do that, so we're going to create this, and that's going to cause this auth state initial to be emitted, simply because that's always the first one that's emitted, right? Because it could take time to get a response. And then, so that comes out first. And then the auth requested is added. This event is added for us. And that's going to go here. It's going to check to see if it's this type of event. It is this type of event. And then we're going to get the response here. In this case, we're going to get false because this is false. And once we get that false response, we're going to end up emitting auth states unauthenticated. And because of that, because this is yielding that state inside the splash screen, we're listening to the state and we check, is it initial? Well, it's not initial. Is it authenticated? It's not authenticated. Is it unauthenticated? Yes, it is. In that case, push replacement named and go to the sign-in screen. Okay, there we go, guys. So that's the basic flow of BLoC. In BLoC, we have map event states. We have our, not this file. We have our states, which we're emitting, and our events. If it still seems a little bit fuzzy, don't worry about it. I did create this simple example. I did choose the simple example for a reason. I wanted it to start off nice and easy. In the next video, it's going to be quite a bit more complicated than this one. So I hope you guys will stick around, and I hope you guys learn a lot in that one. But for now, myself, Vidius, I'm out. Take care, guys. I had just signed off. I thought I was finished, and then I decided to actually run this to see if it's doing what it should be doing, and I realized I made a mistake. So let me just make this bigger again. I forgot here in the BLoC listener to give it a type. So whenever we have the block listeners, also the consumers, and I forgot to plug my headphones into my mic. Whenever we have block listeners, consumers, and builders, we always need to give it the type of block and the type of state. So in this case, this is the off check block, and let's just double check. This one takes, yeah, both, and the off check states like this. Okay. So if you forget this, like I just did, this is what you will see. A big red thing, which says block provided of, called with a context that does not contain a qubit of type qubit dynamic. Essentially what this means is it doesn't know what block to search for, because you'll often end up having multiple blocks, which is what we'll end up having. So we didn't tell Flutter which block to use. So let's try it again, see if it crashes again. I wouldn't be surprised if I forgot something. Yeah, see, perfect, signs in. So this is what we should have seen the first time. And what I'm going to do, in fact, is make this really small and make this a lot smaller, so we can see exactly the way it moves. So I'm going to refresh this, and you can see for a second you saw that it actually moved, right? You saw that that slide in. I should slow this down, but I don't know how to slow it down. Yeah. Okay, let's try it once again. And look very carefully. Right here you can see a slide in. So that's from this navigator of context push replacement. So for just a fraction of a second, we had a circular progress indicator, but because we've hard coded it, everything is instant, and straight away we're pushing the new screen. Okay, and this time it works. So guys, don't forget to give the block listener, the block consumer, and the block builder your block as a type, in this case off check block, and also your state, off check state, because if you do forget to do that, it's going to crash like mine just did, and that's not going to look good. All right, so for the second time, myself, Vidius, I'm out. Take care, guys.